Bienvenidos and welcome to our podcast Yucatan Unveiled, exploring tourism's two sides, a community podcast focusing on a local Yucatecan organization located in Tequí. Today we will be talking about the effects of community-based tourism, CBT, and mass tourism in Yucatan, Mexico. Before we get started, let's introduce your host.
Hi, I'm Julissa, and I'm excited to explore Tequí with you all today. It was a valuable experience to be welcomed by the community members and encouraged to participate in their daily activities. Their expertise as beekeepers, farmers, tour guides, and advocates has inspired us to investigate the benefits of CBT and the autonomy that is retained as these communities members write their own stories. And now I'd like to welcome my co-host Chelsea, who is going to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Chelsea, and exploring Tequí and speaking to the natives allowed me to understand the benefits that CBT brings or everyday tourism brings into a community. It allows me as an outsider to be immersed and support local businesses while still giving the community its ability to be authentic and be true to their native culture and traditions.
Now we are going to explain mass tourism and CBT, and we will use two examples located here in the Yucatan Peninsula. Our podcast takes place only a few months before the installation of the Mayan train. According to the podcast, Mexico's Maya train chugs forward, but at what cost to habitats and communities, by Mike DiGirolamo. The Maya train is in the process of being built, spanning approximately 1,525 kilometers, or 958 miles, across the Yucatan Peninsula. This train is meant to connect the states of Chiapas, Tabasco, Campeche, Yucatan, and Quintana Roo. However, this train threatens forests, biodiversity, ecosystems, and the homes of many locals. Today, it is more crucial than ever what kind of model of development the Yucatan Peninsula is looking for. Indigenous people are working and receiving minimum wage, using Cancun as an example, meaning they have to leave their communities, insert themselves into the globalization process, or migrate to the U.S. as the very last option in order to make money to survive or help their family survive.
To begin with, Mexico is the 9th most visited country by tourists, according to an article called Tourism Policy Review of Mexico, published by Better Policy for Better Lives, meaning economically it is heavily relied on tourism. Being the person across the Mexican border, we have heard of all the different stereotypes that follow Mexicans and Mexican Americans. Living in Mérida the past 6 weeks allowed us to gain a knowledge and a new understanding of all the different cultures that are integrated here in the country of Mexico as a whole. We learned specifically about the Mayan culture and traditions that is integrated here in the Yucatan Peninsula due to the fact that it is the heartland of the Mayan civilization. It holds a strong, different regional identity and culture that makes them stand out from the rest of Mexico. The Yucatan Peninsula holds important archaeological sites such as Chichen Itza, Uxmal, and Tulum, which are the main attractions to tourists, though these are just a few of many. Today, we'll be discussing two specific themes as they relate to Tequí. We're investigating the impacts of mass tourism on Mayan communities and how Tequí serves as an example of a successful CBT or everyday tourism activity.
First, let's define mass tourism and community-based tourism. Mass tourism consists of government-funded and/or private-funded sites that attract foreigners to holiday destinations. These sites often have significant impacts on the environment, community members, and infrastructure that lose the authenticity and appreciation for the land it has been built on. For example, Cancun is a mass tourist site that has benefited from the labor and exoticization of the Mayan community as they try to satisfy the tourist gaze of what it means to be in a foreign country with a rich history of indigenous identity. Here, Chelsea will give us a little background on the history of how Cancun became an international tourist place for visitors all over the world.
Cancun is known for its sandy beaches along the stretch of the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico. Cancun holds hundreds of hotels and resorts with many inclusive options for visitors. Cancun was originally written as two words in the Mayan language, Cancun, which then turned into Cancun in Spanish. Cancun originally means pot of snakes and nest of snakes in the Mayan language. The Cancun project was approved in 1969 and was not started to be built until January of 1970. Mexican President Gustavo Díaz Ordaz commanded the National Bank to create a national plan for tourism. This idea was built on the case that if we could create more jobs for Mexicans, as well as build a sufficient city and make the tourism industry part of the economy. The master project was to build a tourism zone without being in a permanent residential area, build an integral city in the northern part of the city where permanent residents will live, build an international airport on the mainland south of the island. Eventually, Quintana Roo was granted statehood, and the Cancun project, which is under the Isla Mujeres district, became part of the Benito Juarez district. According to Cancun Airport Transportation.com, Cancun now holds over 20 million visitors a year, surpassing the Bahamas and Puerto Rico.
Now, community-based tourism has continuously been seen as a sustainable development that is organized and managed by the indigenous communities to gain economical, social, and environmental advantages while still preserving their culture and tradition. For example, in the website of Coach Mayab, their definition of CBT is it is a way to obtain complementary income without abandoning their daily activities, taking advantage of, preserving, and revaluing the culture and natural resources of their environment. All this contributes to the local economy and finally is an empowering tool for the communities to appropriate their resources.
Let's dive into how Tequit started before we get into our interview with our special guest. Tequit is a village located 41 miles southeast of the capital city of Mérida, Yucatan, about 68 miles from Chichen Itza. According to pueblosamerica.com, its population size is approximately 11,015 people. It is known to be the Guayabera capital of Mexico. The Tequit Cooperative, formed in 2017, is a society composed of 9 partners who share the vision of preserving the biocultural heritage of their place of origin through community-based tourism. The Tequit name means green in Mayan, reflecting its commitment to care for and respect the environment. Tequit is part of the larger cooperative named Coach Mayab. Coach Mayab is part of a union of societies committed to the practice of responsible, supportive, fair, and conscious tourism through the dissemination, marketing, and governance and strengthening of organizations dedicated to community-based tourism in Yucatan. Tequit is able to finance themselves without the interference of private companies or government funding. This allows them to have ownership over how the money is used or dispersed in the community.
Gloria Zip will share more about this. She is licensed in tourism through the Autonomous University of Yucatan and is part of the collective Hacanunes en Tequit and the cooperative Tequit. We had the privilege of learning about her expertise on the history of Tequit and its everyday tourism activities.
Son estos acuerdos que hemos llegado con nuestros vecinos, con nuestros colaboradores al final, ¿no? Son colaboradores para hacer el turismo, ¿no? De esta forma justo no invertimos como en esta infraestructura que por una u otra razón tiene costos, ¿no? Y esos costos que nos ahorramos los redirigimos a estas actividades ambientales también, ¿no? O sea, digamos que del 100% de los recursos que estamos recibiendo, un 90% va directo a las familias y a los involucrados en la actividad.
Gloria shares that their collaboration with their neighbors allows them to create these tours. Therefore, they do not have to spend money on infrastructure and are able to give more money to their community. 90% of their funds go directly to the families and those involved in the activity.
Everyday tourism, which is a subset of community-based tourism, in Tequit involves baking sweet bread at the local bakery, visiting a guayabera factory, learning about vegetables as well as savoring seasonal fruit in a citrus grove, and lastly, beekeeping of the melipona bee production in the traditional Mayan solar. These community tour experiences allow you to incorporate yourself into the local life of the village, offering a unique glimpse of the Mayan traditions, culture, and cuisine. One of the most popular activities is the gastronomic tour, which gives tourists the ability to have an opportunity to try traditional Yucatecan dishes such as pollo pibil, pollo enterrado, and more. It is important to note that these activities start early in the morning because tourists are part of the shopping of the ingredients, where they take in the knowledge of the diversity of dishes, fruits, vegetables, and local ingredients as well. They take part in the cooking and sit down together with the business owners, workers, and family to share the meal with. However, Tequit and other CBT sites have not always experienced immediate success. Manuel Shaw was also one of the experts from our visit to Tequit. He and his wife, Anya Pina, undertook together with their tourist cooperative an agritourism tour to offer the opportunity for foreigners to learn about melipona bees. Manuel Shaw currently does research at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. Anya Pina is a melipona bee expert and received her training at the School of Mani. She is also certified in tourism, and her knowledge greatly contributed to the development of Tequit as a CBT site.
Nosotros habíamos visto muchos fracasos en turismo, ¿no? Había un modelo de turismo que fue impulsado desde el Estado, en donde, a ver, ¿quieres hacer una actividad turística? Estás en una zona de pobreza, tienes un atractivo, pues organízate, hazte un grupo y nosotros te apoyamos, ¿no? La gente pues dice, claro, sí. ¿Qué es el turismo? ¿Quién sabe? Pero sí, si me van a dar dinero, está bien. Entonces, ¿qué sucedía? Traían a un experto y decía, pues te voy a hacer tu plan de negocios, ¿no? Y el plan de negocios, sorprendentemente, todo era viable. Se va a recuperar la inversión en 3 años. Bueno, era así maravilloso, ¿no? Y pues, entonces este plan de negocios se lo entregan al gobierno y lo revisa el otro experto del gobierno que tampoco sabe de turismo, pero dice, sí, viable, perfecto. Entonces, ahí te va tus millones de pesos, no sé, 1 o 2 millones, $500,000 de pesos, y pues aquí haz lo que tienes que hacer, ¿no? Ya tienes tu infraestructura, muy bien. Ahora lo que tienes que hacer es pues que lleguen los turistas, y para eso te vamos a dar $200,000 pesos para que hagas promoción, ¿no? Hacer todo, o sea, sí. Todo, no es solamente comunicación, sino toda la estrategia publicitaria, todas las promociones espectaculares, farm trips, o sea, lo que tú te quieres imaginar con ese dinero. No alcanza, entonces, y además el mismo asesor es el que hace la publicidad, entonces no tiene claridad en qué mercado va a llegar, y entonces es tan bonito el proyecto que los turistas van a llegar solitos, ¿no? Y pasaron 1 año, 2 años, 3 años y nunca llegaron solitos los turistas.
Pero ahí también va, ok, te van a llegar turistas, te tienes que capacitar para recibir a los turistas. ¿Cómo vas a servir la mesa? ¿Qué vas a hacer? O sea, ¿cómo vas a saludar al cliente? ¿No? Y además te vamos a dar tu capacitación en inglés porque vas a recibir extranjeros. Se vio que incluso hay maya hablantes que pues, no tuvieron la oportunidad de ir a la escuela y por ende aprender a leer y escribir, y que les daban su libro para que estudien inglés. Entonces
sí, hay una serie de factores que justo eso, ¿no? Nos tocó ver, llegaban, a ver, examen diagnóstico, y a todos les dan sus hojitas, ¿no? Pero no saben leer, o no leen bien. Entonces, pasar de la actividad primaria, de un sector primario a un sector terciario, es un brinco muy grande aquí en la cabeza, ¿no? Parece muy fácil, pero no lo es, ¿no? Entonces, querer convertir a campesinos en agricultores, en servidores turísticos, pues eso era muy difícil.
Manuel and Gloria share how CPT sites came about and the shortcomings of these techniques. There were some failures because of the lack of information, funding, and accessibility for the Mayan community. Some of these courses were in English rather than their primary language, and some of these individuals could not read or write. They found that it was difficult to transform farmers into tour guides.
I thought it was interesting how this form of tourism was imposed on by an outsider who was considered an expert. The way it was sold or advertised to the community was as if only positive things could come out of this. Gloria shares the difficulties of training, especially when these training courses were taught in English but weren't accessible to the Mayan community. This shows that initiatives made by outsiders are rarely successful because they don't truly know the needs of the communities. They aren't interacting with them on a daily basis or concerned about what is working or not. Instead, they seek financial gain rather than collaborating with the locals.
What do you think, Chelsea?
Thank you for asking, Julissa. Something that shocked me as well was being able to hear how CBT started and the reality and the struggles that go into it. I often fail to realize how hard it is to start a business and can only imagine after hearing their stories how hard it was for them. Gloria says not all of the people had the opportunity to read and write. It is a struggle to turn campesinos into business people and continue to be something they have to find ways to overcome. In the next couple minutes, we included an interview in which we spoke to Fernando Ensaña, a full-time professor and researcher in the Bachelor of Tourism at the Institution of Technology here in Mérida. He was able to get his doctorate in Sustainable Tourism Development and a Master in Tourism Management from the University of Quebec in Canada, published multiple articles in the magazines such as Journal of Heritage Tourism, Journal Ecotourism. Please welcome Fernando as he helped us distinguish community-based tourism, mass tourism, and the impact it has had on the Mayan community.
Bueno, las preguntas por qué es que la mayoría de trabajadores domésticos son residentes maya y qué sacrificios han tenido que hacer la comunidad para poder trabajar en estas áreas.
Claro, sí, bueno, en el caso de la península de Yucatán hay que entender que por qué la mayoría de los empleados, sobre todo en puestos puestos bajos, son de origen maya, de ascendencia maya. Ellos ya estaban en la península de Yucatán antes del turismo. Antes de que el turismo naciera en la península de Yucatán, ellos ya estaban aquí. Entonces, claro, por lo general, estas grandes empresas hoteleras requieren muchos empleados, no requieren gran capacitación, es decir, no requieren mano de obra calificada para la mayoría de los puestos. Para otros sí, pero para la gran mayoría de los que se desarrollan en un hotel no. Y pues la gente de la localidad la puede cubrir muy bien. Entonces, la pregunta es, y claro, también hay una cuestión histórica, ¿no? Por lo general, la gente de ascendencia maya en la península de Yucatán han sido los que han tenido menos acceso a la educación, los que han visto siempre sus tierras expropiadas, despojados. Entonces, de alguna manera buscan en el turismo una salida, una forma de emplearse. Matilde Córdoba lo dice muy bien en su libro, ¿no? De atorados en el turismo, stuck with tourism. A veces no es que si ellos tuvieran una opción mejor, seguramente la tomarían, pero la realidad es que muchas veces es la única opción que tienen para trabajar y para poder, mejorar su vida, ¿no? Que también debo decir, no todos los casos ellos son víctimas del turismo. Hay algunos casos en donde ellos se han logrado, bajo una organización fuerte, apropiarse de la actividad turística. Sí los hay. Son los menos. Han sido casos en donde, producto de mucha lucha social, pero sí que hay algunos ejemplos de esto.
Fernando speaks on how the Mayans were the first individuals living here in the Yucatan Peninsula, causing them to be the first people to take these jobs in order to make money for their families. He also makes an emphasis in saying there have been cases where they have been victims of mass tourism, but in other rare cases, they also have been able to make an adequate living.
Que tenía sobre los trabajadores mayas, que usted dice que sí han podido lograr ser como gerentes o hacer algo más. ¿Qué diferencia ve entre ese trabajo que hacen y el trabajo comunitario de la población maya? ¿De qué forma se apoderan o pueden tomar autonomía sobre cómo se quieren representar al mundo?
Claro, yo creo que sí hay mucha diferencia. Es decir, en ambos casos ellos pueden ganarse la vida y pueden mejorar su calidad de vida, ¿no? Tanto ascendiendo en un hotel y llegar a ser gerentes, que son los menos casos, como casos en donde se organizan bajo diferentes figuras legales, por lo general una cooperativa, y administran, por ejemplo, un cenote, en donde ellos conservan la propiedad del cenote, o es propiedad ejidal y ellos lo utilizan, pero ellos son dueños de la sociedad cooperativa y son dueños de los medios de producción, del equipo, del restaurante, de las instalaciones. Ellos cobran. Es decir, ellos no solamente trabajan en el cenote, sino que además son empresarios. Y esto creo que es la principal diferencia, ¿no? En el turismo de masas o en un hotel, ellos siempre serán empleados, mientras que en el otro, ellos son, además de que muchos de ellos son empleados, son propietarios, son empresarios, son dueños. Esa es la principal diferencia que yo veo entre trabajar en turismo de masas como empleado o trabajar en el turismo comunitario.
Fernando allows us to understand that mass tourism ensures that the Mayan workers will always just be employees. They are not owners or collaborators in the private sectors or private companies. In CBT, many are owners of businesses that welcome tourists to take part in their daily life activity. They are willing to share what they feel comfortable with about their culture and traditions. Importantly, they work with other businesses to ensure that the community is able to gain advantages as a whole. Ultimately, the interview with Fernando allowed us to understand the benefits and the different disadvantages that come about CBT. Mass tourism has and will continue to be a big part of the economy here in Mexico. This does not ultimately mean that there cannot be alternatives to bring into our own lives. Taking part in CBT sites can bring a different type of knowledge as well as a different type of understanding to a culture that, as the local people, welcome you into their lives. CBT allows the Mayan people to remain in their territories. These everyday activities in Tequí allow the people to be more aware of the Mayan culture, like the Milipona beads, as well as the local forms of organizing the community or creating a space where people can have more control of their own identity. CBT ensures that communities do not decline and disappear, and that communities themselves build a strategy in building resilience in the social and ecological systems, hence making a contribution to sustainable development. While yes, CBT alludes to a more mutually beneficial relationship between the community and the tourists, where the tourists are not afforded priority, but rather part of the system, there is a barrier that follows to allow CBT sites to come to its full development. Manuel talked about how CBT trainings are not accessible by the Mayan community who do not know how to read or do not know how to speak Spanish or English, or even at times certain businesses are not in the local area are not fully committed and are not always open for tourists to visit. Even so, families might see that and insert themselves into an economy that is transactional and taxing, which is what many Indigenous families face, oftentimes forced to accept minimum wage because their local community does not have something like CBT that will allow them and others in the community to gain advantages. Truly, the way to go about CBT projects in community is to see what is needed and the support from locals that will allow for CBT sites to venture to its full capability. What do you think, Julissa, about CBT, mass tourism, and the experiences and the knowledge we gained from Gloria, Manuel, Ana, and Fernando?
The beauty of our experience in Tequí was the care and intentionality with which we were received. Gloria, Manuel, and Ana were willing to answer all of our questions and gave detailed responses to each one. I appreciated the slow pace of the tour and how it felt more like a conversation rather than a lecture. This allowed me to feel immersed in the community rather than simply being an observer. I was able to see the determination Gloria, Manuel, and Ana have to support their community and educate the public. I hope that more people are able to experience tourism at a local level and appreciate the knowledge and understanding they're receiving from these communities. I also enjoyed our conversation with Fernando, and it was great to see that conversations about CBT and mass tourism are happening in university settings. I hope that those students feel encouraged to support CBT sites in Mexico. We hope that you enjoyed learning more about Tequí, some history about Cancun, and the different opportunities that come with CBT sites in comparison to mass tourism locations. If you are interested in learning more about Tequí, you can visit their website at goshmayop.com/ourdestination/Tequí. This has been an amazing time explaining the importance of different ways to go about tourism. See you next time!